Megan Dawson sat in her cubicle, her fingers poised over her keyboard. She had been at this company for 5 years, quietly working in the background, unnoticed and unappreciated. Her colleagues passed by, absorbed in their own lives, never giving her a second glance. She was the definition of invisible. The subtle dismissals, the offhand comments, the jokes made at her expense, they all stung, but she never reacted. She just worked. Yet today, something felt different. She had been called into the meeting with the senior leadership team, a room filled with people who had always overlooked her. Her palms were slightly sweaty as she walked into the conference room, the cool air of the building hitting her skin. The room fell silent when she entered. Megan's attire was simple, black slacks, a modest blouse, but she stood tall, despite the nerves swirling in her stomach. The executives exchanged looks, their eyes scanning her with the same dismissive expression they always wore. "Megan, we're glad you could join us," the CEO said, his voice dripping with condescension. "We need someone to handle this minor issue with the company's financial report. I'm sure you can handle it, right?" His tone made it clear that he expected her to fail, to stumble over the numbers. Megan took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. This was it, the moment that would define everything. "Of course, I'll handle it," she replied, her voice calm and steady. As she turned to face the presentation board, the room erupted into murmurs. Megan's hands moved with precision as she opened the financial report on the screen, her eyes scanning the figures. The mistakes were glaring, and they weren't just small errors. They were massive discrepancies that, if ignored, would lead the company down a dangerous path. She felt the weight of the moment. The silence in the room grew heavier. She could hear the subtle scoffs and whispers from the back. "This is going to be a disaster," someone muttered under their breath. Megan glanced at the screen one last time, her mind calculating the next steps. Then, without a word, she began to speak. "The report you're reviewing is incorrect," she stated, her voice cutting through the tension. The room fell silent, the murmurs halting immediately. She continued, outlining the financial errors she had discovered. Every person in the room was watching her now, their skepticism turning into disbelief. Megan presented her findings with clarity, the numbers adding up perfectly. The CEO's expression faltered, and he leaned forward, clearly caught off guard. "What are you suggesting, Megan?" he asked, his tone now more cautious than before. Megan's eyes met his, and for the first time in years, she stood her ground. "I'm suggesting that if we don't fix these issues now, the company could lose millions. I've already calculated a plan to correct everything," she said, detailing the steps the company needed to take. The room was completely silent. No one knew how to respond. The CEO exchanged looks with the CFO, who nodded slowly. It was clear that they hadn't expected this, didn't think she was capable of seeing something so obvious. Megan watched as their faces slowly changed, the realization settling in. The same people who had dismissed her now had no choice but to listen. She wasn't just the invisible woman anymore. She was the one with the answers, the one who could save the company. The meeting ended abruptly, and as Megan returned to her desk, the whispers were different now. They weren't laughing at her anymore. They were talking about her, wondering how they had missed it. Megan Dawson, the woman who had been ignored for so long, had just proven everyone wrong. Megan sat back in her chair, the hum of the office now feeling different. It wasn't the usual noise of mundane tasks and small talk. There was a weight in the air, a shift. Her colleagues, who once barely acknowledged her existence, were now watching her, some with surprise, others with newfound respect. Megan didn't let the attention distract her. She had already done what needed to be done. What surprised her was how quickly everything was changing. As the days went on, her inbox filled with requests to collaborate, questions about reports, and even casual messages from people who had once dismissed her. Yet, no one had directly congratulated her. No one had come forward to acknowledge the weight of her actions. But it wasn't the praise Megan sought. She had done what she knew was right for the company. Still, the silence in the hallways was telling. The corporate world was never quick to admit they had been wrong. Megan had learned that over the years. It wasn't until the next board meeting, a week later, that things truly came to a head. The CEO called for the team to gather and review the new reports. As the room filled with the usual members, Megan sat near the back, just out of the spotlight. Her presence was barely noticed as the executives filed in, but her mind was sharp. She had already anticipated the situation. The financial corrections she had suggested were now showing clear improvements. There were no more discrepancies, no more looming threats of crisis. The reports now painted a picture of stability and growth. The meeting began like any other, but this time, the tone was different. The CEO was more engaged, more focused. As the numbers were presented, there was no mocking, no subtle ridicule. This was the first time Megan felt like her voice mattered in a room that had always felt out of reach. Halfway through, the CEO paused and turned his attention to Megan. The room went silent as his eyes met hers. "Megan," he said, his voice suddenly laced with a note of respect. "You were right. Your report saved us." The room shifted. Megan could see the others exchanging glances, none of them daring to speak. Her palms were slightly sweaty, but she stood up and addressed the room calmly. "I did what needed to be done," she replied, her voice steady, though inside she was proud of herself. This was the moment she had waited for, acknowledgement, not from applause, but from those who had once disregarded her. Megan wasn't expecting a standing ovation. What mattered to her was knowing that she had earned her place, not through flashy presentations or extravagant ideas, but through her dedication to the company's well-being. As the meeting continued, the conversations changed. People started asking her for insights, her expertise, and her opinion. It was subtle, but it was there. She was no longer just a background player. Megan Dawson had found her voice, and for the first time in her career, she knew she was heard. Megan walked into the office the next morning, her steps more confident than before. The buzz of conversation around her was different now. People looked at her not with indifference, but with curiosity, some even offering smiles. She could feel the shift, the subtle acknowledgement of her newfound importance. Yet, despite the changes, Megan stayed focused on her work. She was not here for recognition. She was here to prove herself in a way that could not be ignored. That morning, she received an email from the CEO asking her to join a special project team. Megan knew it was a test, one to see if her recent success could translate into something more. She accepted the invitation, knowing that this was her chance to make an even greater impact. As she entered the meeting room, the faces around the table were familiar, but their expressions were different. There was a mix of respect and curiosity, as if they were still processing the fact that Megan, the woman who had once been dismissed, was now an integral part of their team. The project was challenging, and the stakes were high. The team needed someone who could not only analyze data, but also make decisions under pressure. Megan knew she had the skills, but now it was time to prove it again. The team's first task was to create a comprehensive strategy to address the company's declining market share. As discussions unfolded, Megan noticed something. People were looking to her for answers. Her input, once disregarded, was now being valued. She spoke up with confidence, offering her insights on the latest market trends and consumer behavior. The room was silent as they listened, absorbing her words. The CEO, who had once dismissed her as just another employee, was now actively engaging with her ideas. "Megan, what do you think about this approach?" he asked, genuinely interested. Megan took a deep breath and spoke. "I think we need to shift our focus to online engagement," she said, pointing to the data that showed a growing trend in digital platforms. "Our competitors are already doing it. If we don't follow suit, we'll fall further behind." The team nodded, impressed with her clarity and vision. For the next few hours, Megan worked alongside her colleagues, guiding them through the complexities of the project. She didn't demand respect. She earned it through her expertise and dedication. As the meeting came to a close, the CEO stood up and addressed the room. "I have to say, I'm impressed with how the team is moving forward," he said, glancing at Megan with a nod of approval. "Megan, I appreciate your hard work and the insights you've brought to the table." The meeting ended, but Megan didn't leave with a sense of victory. She left with something far more valuable, the realization that she had truly earned her place. It wasn't just about saving the company anymore. It was about the respect she had gained and the recognition that her voice was one worth hearing. Megan wasn't invisible anymore. She had become a force to be reckoned with, not because of her title, but because of the undeniable impact she had made. Megan had been at the company for nearly a year since the pivotal moment that had changed everything. She had proven herself, but now she faced a new challenge: maintaining the respect she had earned and continuing to show that she was more than just the quiet employee. It wasn't enough to simply save the company once. Megan knew that now she had to lead. She spent her days focusing on the project she had been assigned, determined to ensure it succeeded. But it wasn't just about the project anymore. It was about setting a new precedent for herself. Her co-workers, though respectful, still seemed to watch her closely, as if waiting for her to slip. The pressure was mounting. Megan had earned her place, but now she had to keep it. She couldn't afford to be complacent. Each morning, she would walk into the office with a sense of purpose. The once familiar sound of footsteps in the hallway no longer felt like background noise. Now, each step felt like a commitment, a reminder of how far she had come. She couldn't ignore the way people greeted her now, the subtle nods of approval. But she still kept to herself, focused on the work. She had learned the hard way that the only way to gain true respect in the corporate world was through results, not words. One afternoon, as Megan sat at her desk, reviewing financial reports, her phone rang. It was the CEO's office. Her heart raced as she answered, unsure of what to expect. "Megan, I need you in my office right away," the CEO's assistant said, her voice clipped. Megan's mind raced as she grabbed her notebook and headed toward the CEO's office. She knew the importance of the moment. What did he want from her now? Had she done something wrong? She knocked on the door and stepped inside. The CEO looked up from his desk, his expression unreadable. "Megan, I've been reviewing the project's progress, and I want you to take on a larger role in the company," he said, his voice calm but firm. Megan's stomach twisted. A larger role? What could that possibly mean? Was this a test? "We need someone to lead the new department for digital strategy," he continued. "You've demonstrated the ability to turn things around. We want you to take charge of this initiative." Megan stood there for a moment, processing the words. It wasn't a request, it was an opportunity, one she had worked hard for. "I'm honored," she replied, keeping her voice steady. "I'll get started right away." As she left the office, her mind raced with possibilities. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for. She wasn't just an employee anymore. She was a leader. Over the next few weeks, Megan dove headfirst into her new role. She worked late, researched new trends, and met with department heads to devise a strategy that would revolutionize the company's digital presence. It wasn't easy. The higher she climbed, the more resistance she faced. There were still whispers in the hallways, doubts about her ability to succeed. But Megan didn't let it get to her. She had been underestimated before, and she had proven them all wrong. This time would be no different. As the project progressed, the results spoke for themselves. Megan's team launched a digital campaign that brought in new clients, boosted revenue, and increased brand visibility. The doubters were silenced. Megan wasn't just another employee. She was now the driving force behind the company's future. At the next company meeting, the CEO publicly acknowledged her efforts. "Megan has led us to a new era," he said, his words ringing out in the room. "She has shown that when you give someone the chance, they can exceed expectations." Megan smiled, but inside, she felt a sense of pride that went beyond the recognition. She had earned this. She had earned everything. Megan stood in front of the large window in her office, watching the city below. The skyline had always seemed distant, a reminder of where she was and where she had come from. Now, it felt more like a reflection of her journey. She had reached a place she never thought possible, yet the weight of leadership still felt heavy. The responsibilities were many, and each decision she made carried the potential to affect the future of the company. She was no longer just a part of the system. She was the one steering the ship. It wasn't easy. The higher Megan climbed, the more isolated she felt. There were moments of doubt, times when she questioned whether she had the strength to continue. But she had come too far to turn back now. As the months passed, Megan's leadership became more apparent. Her team was thriving, and the new department she had established was already making waves in the industry. They had launched several successful digital campaigns, attracting new clients and boosting revenue. It was clear to everyone around her that she was not just competent, but exceptional. But with success came challenges. Megan had earned respect, but she was also making enemies. There were whispers in the halls, rumors that Megan was too ambitious, that she had bypassed others to get where she was. It was a familiar feeling, the sense of being underestimated, but this time, it didn't bother her. She had learned long ago that people would always talk. What mattered was the work she was doing and the results she was achieving. One afternoon, Megan was called into the CEO's office again. As she sat down across from him, she couldn't help but wonder if this was the moment that would define her future. "Megan," the CEO said, "I've been following your progress closely. I'm impressed with what you've accomplished. You've exceeded all expectations." Megan nodded, waiting for the catch. There was always a catch. "But there's something we need to discuss," he continued. "There are some concerns within the senior leadership team. People are questioning your approach, your leadership style." Megan's heart sank. She had known this moment would come, but it didn't make it any easier to hear. "I understand," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "But I'm not here to please everyone. I'm here to do what's best for the company." The CEO regarded her for a moment, his expression unreadable. "I know, and that's why I'm offering you something important. We need someone to take charge of the next phase of our expansion. This project will be the biggest challenge yet, and I want you to lead it." Megan's mind raced. This was what she had been working for, the opportunity to truly make a mark, to take her career to the next level. "I accept," she said without hesitation. "I'll make sure we succeed." As she left the CEO's office, Megan felt a surge of determination. This was it, the chance she had been waiting for. The project was daunting, but she knew that if anyone could make it work, it was her. She had already overcome so much, and now she was ready for the next challenge. Megan Dawson wasn't just a survivor of the corporate world. She was a force within it. And nothing, no matter how difficult, could take that away from her. Megan sat at her desk, staring at the blueprint for the new expansion project. The weight of responsibility was heavier now than ever before. She had worked her way up, faced numerous challenges, and earned the respect of her colleagues. But this was different. The next phase of the company's expansion was a high-stakes initiative, one that would determine not only the future of the business, but also her place within it. The pressure was intense, and the doubts she had long pushed aside began to creep in. Was she ready for this? Could she really pull it off? Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. It was Rachel, her trusted assistant, holding a file. "Megan, the team's waiting for you in the conference room," she said. Megan nodded, standing up to gather her things. As she walked to the meeting, the usual hum of the office felt different. There was a buzz in the air, but it wasn't the usual kind. This felt like anticipation. Megan entered the conference room, greeted by a round of nods from the team. The leadership team, composed of both new and familiar faces, was there, all ready to discuss the next steps for the expansion project. She could feel their eyes on her as she took her seat at the head of the table. "Let's get started," Megan said, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. "We have a lot to cover." As the meeting unfolded, Megan's focus sharpened. She outlined the strategy, emphasizing the key objectives and the resources needed to make this expansion a success. She knew that this project would require every ounce of her expertise and leadership. The room was quiet as everyone absorbed the details, and Megan could see the respect in their eyes. They were looking to her for guidance, and for the first time, she felt completely in control. The discussions were intense, but Megan handled each challenge with precision. She was no longer the quiet, overlooked employee. She was the leader of the room, the one everyone turned to for direction. As the meeting concluded, Megan felt a surge of pride. The team was aligned, and they were ready to move forward. But as the others left, the CEO stayed behind. "Megan," he began, his tone more serious than usual. "You've proven yourself time and time again. But this next step, this expansion, will be a real test. Are you sure you're ready for this?" Megan met his gaze, feeling the weight of his question. But she didn't hesitate. "I'm ready," she said, her voice confident. The CEO nodded, a small smile forming on his lips. "I know you are." As she left the conference room, Megan felt something she hadn't in a long time: true belief in herself. She had always been capable, but now, she had the experience to back it up. The road ahead would be difficult, but Megan was no longer afraid of the challenges. She was ready to take on whatever came next. The future of the company, and her own, was in her hands, and she wasn't about to let go. Megan stood at her desk, reviewing the final numbers for the upcoming expansion. The weight of responsibility had grown heavier, but with it came a sense of pride. She had poured countless hours into this project, and now it was finally coming together. As she clicked through the reports, she felt a sense of accomplishment, but there was still much to do. The pressure was mounting, and the team depended on her leadership. The next few weeks would be crucial in determining whether this expansion would succeed or fail. She couldn't afford to falter. She had worked too hard to let it slip through her fingers. That afternoon, she walked into the conference room for a final meeting before the launch. The room was filled with the key players, everyone who had worked alongside her to make this happen. The team's energy was palpable, a mix of excitement and nervousness. Megan looked around the table, making eye contact with each person, silently reminding them that they were in this together. As she took her seat, the CEO spoke up. "Megan, this is it. The next phase begins tomorrow. Are we ready?" Megan took a deep breath. She had thought about every detail, anticipated every possible outcome, and she was confident in her team. "We're ready," she replied, her voice steady. The CEO nodded, but Megan could see the hint of concern in his eyes. He knew the stakes. The whole company was riding on this. The meeting continued as they reviewed the final preparations. Megan led the discussion, offering solutions to potential problems and ensuring that every team member understood their role. She could see the respect in their eyes, the acknowledgement that she was the one guiding them through this. As the meeting ended, the CEO pulled Megan aside. "I'm proud of everything you've done, Megan," he said quietly. "But remember, this is just the beginning. The real test comes now." Megan nodded, understanding the weight of his words. She had proven herself time and time again, but this was different. This was the moment that would define her career. As she left the room, Megan couldn't shake the feeling that this was the turning point, the moment she would either soar or fall. But she had no intention of falling. She had come too far. The next day, as the expansion officially launched, Megan stood at the helm, watching her vision come to life. The team moved in sync, executing the plan flawlessly. The pressure was still there, but Megan knew that with every successful step, they were closer to their goal. That night, Megan sat at her desk, reviewing the day's successes. The numbers were promising, the feedback was positive, and the future was looking bright. She had made it. She had taken the company to new heights. But more than that, she had proven to herself that she was capable of more than she had ever imagined. Megan Dawson was no longer just a name on a corporate ladder. She was a leader, someone who had earned her place, and someone who had the power to shape the future. Megan stood in front of the expansive glass window in her office, looking out at the skyline as the sun set over the city. The last few months had been a whirlwind of meetings, decisions, and relentless pressure, but she had made it. The expansion had been a resounding success, and the company was on track to break records. But for Megan, it wasn't just about the numbers or the accolades. It was about the transformation she had gone through. The woman who had once been overlooked, now a leader, respected by her peers, and trusted by the CEO. The feeling of success, however, was bittersweet. She had reached a milestone, but the journey ahead was just as important as the one behind her. Megan had built a solid foundation, but now it was time to focus on the future. It wasn't enough to just sustain success. She needed to build on it. As she sat back at her desk, Megan reviewed the company's next steps. There were new projects on the horizon, new challenges to face. The industry was evolving, and the company needed to stay ahead of the curve. The digital strategy that had propelled them forward had to be expanded, optimized, and integrated into every facet of the business. But as she dove deeper into the plans, a feeling of uncertainty crept in. The challenges ahead were different from anything she had faced before. These weren't just logistical hurdles. They were systemic issues that required a complete shift in the company's culture. Megan had spent so much time focusing on results that she hadn't realized the cracks in the foundation. Her leadership had brought the company to new heights, but now it was time to address the internal problems that could undermine everything they had worked for. The thought weighed heavily on her. She had always prided herself on her ability to solve problems, but this was different. This wasn't just about finding a solution to a problem. It was about reshaping the way the company operated from the ground up. But Megan was no stranger to challenges. She had fought her way to the top, and she wasn't about to stop now. She knew it wouldn't be easy. Changing a company's culture was a slow, painstaking process, but it was necessary. Megan stood up from her desk and walked over to the whiteboard on the wall. She began to sketch out ideas, outlining the vision for the next phase. It wasn't just about profits anymore. It was about creating a company that was built on trust, collaboration, and innovation. She wanted the employees to feel just as invested in the company's success as she was. It wasn't going to be easy, but she had already proven that she could turn things around. With determination, Megan began to form a plan. She would work closely with her team, creating programs that encouraged open communication, fostered creativity, and rewarded collaboration. It was going to take time, but she knew it would pay off. As Megan looked over the plan, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The path ahead was still uncertain, but she was ready. She had been underestimated, overlooked, and written off, but now she was in charge, and nothing was going to stop her from leading the company to even greater success. Megan Dawson wasn't just a survivor anymore. She was a visionary, and she was going to reshape the future of the company, one step at a time. Megan walked through the office, the familiar hum of activity surrounding her. It had been a few months since she had implemented the changes she envisioned for the company's culture, and the difference was palpable. The employees were more engaged, more willing to collaborate, and the atmosphere had shifted from one of complacency to one of excitement and innovation. Megan had worked tirelessly, attending meetings, listening to concerns, and rolling out initiatives to foster open communication and creativity. It wasn't an easy process. Many of the old habits were ingrained, and changing them required persistence. Yet, despite the obstacles, Megan had seen the results she had hoped for. There was a newfound energy in the office, and the numbers reflected that. Productivity had increased, turnover rates had dropped, and the company was seeing higher customer satisfaction levels. Megan knew that this success wasn't just because of her leadership, it was because of the collective effort of the entire team. They had bought into the vision. But even as the company began to thrive, Megan couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to be done. She had been so focused on implementing the right changes that she hadn't fully realized just how much further she could take the company. The industry was evolving rapidly, and staying ahead would require continuous innovation. Megan sat at her desk, reviewing the latest market trends and consumer demands. The company had done well, but she knew the competition was fierce. It was time for another leap forward. She needed to push her team even further, get them to think bigger, act bolder, and embrace even more challenging goals. The next phase of growth would be about innovation, leading the market rather than following it. Megan knew that this wouldn't be easy. There would be risks, but she was no stranger to those. She had taken risks before, and they had paid off. The key was to keep the momentum going, to continue fostering the culture of creativity and collaboration that had already started to bear fruit. As she made her plan, Megan reached out to her leadership team. She invited them to a strategy session where they would discuss the future. This meeting would be different. It would be about dreaming big and taking bold steps towards something new. When the day arrived, Megan stood at the head of the conference table, looking around at the faces of the people who had helped build this success. She could feel the energy in the room. They were ready. "We've come so far," Megan began, "but this is just the beginning. The market is changing, and we need to change with it. We have the team, we have the talent, and we have the vision. Now, we need to push the boundaries of what we thought was possible. Let's be leaders, not followers." The room was silent for a moment as her words sunk in. Then, one by one, the team members nodded. They were on board. They were ready for this next step. Megan felt a sense of pride welling up inside her. She had built something special, and now it was time to take it to new heights. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but it would be worth it. Megan knew that if anyone could lead the company to even greater success, it was this team, and it was her. Together, they would face the challenges ahead and continue to build a future that was bigger, brighter, and more innovative than ever before. Megan sat in her office, staring at the screen as the latest reports rolled in. The numbers were promising, but she knew that the real test was still ahead. The next phase of the company's expansion was approaching, and the stakes had never been higher. Megan had spent months building up to this moment, but now, she had to prove that the company could sustain its growth and continue to innovate. As she reviewed the plans, Megan felt the familiar mix of excitement and pressure that came with leading such a high-profile project. There were no guarantees, no safety nets. Success or failure would depend on her ability to navigate the challenges ahead. The future of the company rested on her shoulders. She had come so far, but this was the moment that would define her legacy. Megan had always known that leadership wasn't about taking the easy road. It was about pushing boundaries, making tough decisions, and inspiring others to reach for something greater. The team had come a long way under her guidance, but now, it was time to step up and lead them through the most challenging phase yet. That afternoon, Megan held a meeting with her leadership team. The room was filled with eager faces, each one ready to tackle the next step in their journey. Megan could feel the energy in the room. It was a mix of anticipation and determination. This was the moment they had all been working toward. "We've done well so far," Megan began, her voice steady. "But we can't afford to slow down now. The market is evolving rapidly, and we need to stay ahead of the curve. This is our chance to redefine the industry. But it won't be easy." As she spoke, Megan could see the team's commitment reflected in their eyes. They were ready. They had been with her from the beginning, and now, they were all in it together. The challenges they faced were formidable, but Megan knew that they had the talent, the drive, and the vision to succeed. The team spent the next few hours hashing out the details of the new strategy, fine-tuning every aspect of the plan. Megan was impressed by the collaboration and the passion that each team member brought to the table. This was more than just a business strategy. It was a shared vision, one that everyone believed in. As the meeting concluded, Megan stood up and addressed the team. "We've laid the groundwork," she said. "Now, we move forward together. Let's make sure we leave nothing to chance. Our success depends on how well we execute, and I have no doubt that we'll get it done." The team nodded in agreement, and Megan could feel the weight of their collective determination. They were ready to take on whatever came next. Megan left the meeting with a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead would be filled with challenges, but she knew that she was surrounded by a team that was just as committed to success as she was. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about all of them, working together to create something extraordinary. Megan was ready to lead them to the next chapter, to a future that was filled with endless possibilities. Megan walked into the office the following morning with a quiet sense of purpose. The meeting from the previous day had sparked something new in her, an energy, a drive to push even further. The company had reached new heights, but she knew the true test was maintaining that momentum. The expansion project was now in full swing, and the first phase had been a success. But the path ahead was far from simple. Megan had faced setbacks before, but this time, the challenges felt different. They were bigger, more complex, and required even more from her as a leader. Yet, as she sat at her desk, looking over the latest reports, Megan couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. The team was delivering, and the strategy she had worked so hard to implement was showing results. There was still work to be done, but the foundation was solid. As the day went on, Megan was greeted with new opportunities and challenges. Her phone rang constantly, emails flooded in, and her calendar quickly filled up with meetings. It was the nature of the job, endless tasks that required her attention, all demanding urgency. But Megan had learned how to navigate the chaos. She knew when to prioritize and when to delegate. She had learned that leadership wasn't just about making decisions. It was about empowering those around her to make decisions too. The afternoon arrived quickly, and Megan found herself in another strategy session with her leadership team. This time, the conversation turned to innovation. The company had established itself as a leader in the industry, but Megan knew that they couldn't stop there. The market was shifting, and in order to stay ahead, they needed to embrace even bolder ideas. "We've built something incredible," Megan began, addressing the team. "But we can't afford to rest on our laurels. The market is changing faster than we can keep up. We need to take risks, try new things, and be willing to fail if it means we can innovate." Her words were met with nods of agreement, but Megan could see the hesitation in some of their eyes. Taking risks was never easy, especially when success had already been achieved. "I know this isn't comfortable," Megan continued, "but if we don't adapt, we'll be left behind. We've come this far by thinking differently, by taking chances. Now, we need to push the envelope even further." The room was silent for a moment as everyone took in her words. Megan could feel the weight of the decision ahead. It wasn't just about the company's future. It was about her leadership and whether she could inspire her team to take the leap. After a few moments, the team spoke up, eager to explore new possibilities and tackle the risks that lay ahead. Megan knew they were ready. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, she felt a deep sense of confidence in her team. They were in this together, and they had the ability to achieve even more. As the meeting ended and everyone filed out of the room, Megan remained seated for a moment, deep in thought. The path ahead would be challenging, but it was also full of promise. She had the team, the vision, and the determination to lead them to even greater success. The company's next chapter was just beginning, and Megan Dawson was ready to lead the way. Megan sat in her office, staring at the new strategic plan laid out in front of her. The company had come a long way since she had first stepped into her leadership role, but she knew that the journey wasn't over yet. The market was evolving at a rapid pace, and if they didn't keep up, they risked losing everything they had worked so hard to build. Megan had spent the past several weeks collaborating with her team, brainstorming new ideas, and pushing them to think bigger and bolder. Now, it was time to put those ideas into action. She felt a surge of determination. This was the moment she had been waiting for, the moment that would set the course for the company's future. But as confident as she was in the team and the vision they had created together, Megan couldn't shake the nagging feeling that there was more to be done. The world around them was changing too quickly, and they had to act fast to stay ahead of the competition. As she scanned through the numbers on her computer screen, Megan heard a knock on the door. Rachel, her assistant, poked her head in. Megan, the CEO is waiting for you in the conference room. He wants to go over the next steps for the new campaign. Megan stood up, pushing aside her doubts, and nodded. Thanks, Rachel. I'll be right there. The walk to the conference room felt different today. It wasn't just another meeting. It was a pivotal moment in the company's history. When Megan entered the room, the CEO was already seated, flipping through some documents. He looked up and gave her a smile, though there was a sense of seriousness in his eyes. Megan, he said, we've been reviewing the latest figures. The new campaign is shaping up well, but we need to make sure we're ready to execute. We can't afford any mistakes. Megan nodded, her mind already turning to the strategy they had developed. I've got it covered, she said confidently. I believe we have everything we need to succeed. We've got the right team, the right vision, and the right plan in place. The CEO gave her a long look, then nodded. I trust you, Megan. But remember, this isn't just about the numbers. This is about leadership. You're leading the charge, and the entire company is watching. His words hung in the air. Megan had never felt more aware of the weight of her responsibility. She had already proven herself once, but now she was being asked to do it again, on an even larger scale. The pressure was immense, but Megan had never been one to back down from a challenge. We'll execute flawlessly, she said, her voice steady. I'm confident in our strategy, and I'm confident in this team. The CEO smiled again, this time with a hint of pride. That's what I like to hear. As Megan left the conference room, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. The task ahead was daunting, but she had the support of her team, the trust of the CEO, and the belief in herself that had carried her this far. The road to success was never easy, but Megan was ready to lead them through it. She wasn't just going to make the company succeed, she was going to lead it to greatness. Megan stood at the edge of the conference room, her eyes scanning the room full of eager faces. It had been a long journey, and now, the moment had arrived. The launch of the new campaign was a few days away, and the pressure had never been higher. Her team had worked tirelessly, and the results were impressive. But Megan knew that the true challenge was about to begin. The plan was in place, the strategy had been set, and now it was time to execute. As the team gathered around the table, Megan felt a rush of excitement. There was a sense of unity in the air, a shared belief that they could accomplish anything if they worked together. She looked at each of their faces, knowing that they had all bought into her vision. This wasn't just her success, it was theirs. All right, team, Megan began, her voice steady and commanding. We've prepared for this. We've planned every step, and we've anticipated every challenge. Now, it's time to make it happen. Let's go out there and show them what we're capable of. Her words sparked something in the room, a renewed sense of energy. Megan could see the determination in their eyes, and for a moment, she allowed herself to feel the weight of their belief in her. It was a reminder that she wasn't alone in this journey. They were all in it together. The next few days flew by in a blur. Megan spent every waking moment overseeing the execution of the plan. She attended meetings, coordinated with departments, and made sure everything was moving according to schedule. It wasn't easy, and there were moments of doubt, but Megan refused to let anything stop her. She had come too far. As the campaign launch day approached, the excitement in the office grew. The final preparations were being made, and everything was falling into place. Megan knew this was a turning point for the company. If the campaign succeeded, it would solidify their place as industry leaders. But Megan also understood that success wasn't guaranteed. The competition was fierce, and there were always risks. She had learned to embrace the uncertainty, knowing that the greatest rewards often came from the greatest risks. The day of the launch arrived, and Megan stood at the front of the conference room once again. This time, the room was filled with anticipation. Everyone was watching, her team, the senior executives, even the CEO. Megan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "This is our time," she said, looking around the room. "We've worked hard, and we've done everything right. Now, let's make it happen." With those words, Megan set the wheels in motion. The campaign launched, and the response was immediate. The company's new approach was met with enthusiasm from clients and industry leaders alike. Megan watched the numbers rise, the feedback pouring in. It was happening, exactly as they had planned. The success of the campaign was undeniable, and Megan knew that this was just the beginning. She had proven herself as a leader, someone who could take on the biggest challenges and come out on top. As the days passed, the team celebrated their success, but Megan remained focused. She knew that there was always more work to be done. The journey was far from over. But for the first time in a long while, Megan felt a deep sense of satisfaction. She had led her team to victory, and she was ready to take on whatever came next. The future was bright, and Megan Dawson was ready to lead them forward, one bold step at a time.